дико, я shiny, пару лямов money on my neck, gold money rain.
It's my name, это мой money rain, no pain, no gain, иди нахуй Monday. Dobra, it's my name, ра-та-та, bang-bang, заряжай, бляха, моя baby mother. It's my name, это мой money.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Cypherfics. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the second part of What If Aizen Finds BEN10 in Bleach Verse. Special note, this fanfic is written in a masterpiece of Bigby the Big Bad Wolf on fanfictionnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. This took everyone, even Ulquiorra, by surprise. Aizen wasn't going to use his usual method. This was a first. But could he really get the boy to join them by choice? Ben found himself sitting against wall again as he waited for news. Obviously, there was a debate about what to do with him. Ben sighed as he looked at the ceiling. So far Aizen was at least willing to give him the benefit of a doubt, and he seemed helpful enough. Still, Ben was on guard. Sure, the guy seemed friendly, but that didn't mean he was completely trustworthy. Ben had dealt with enough backstabbers to know that he needed to take whatever anyone said with a grain of salt. Ben's thoughts drifted to other things. There was no guarantee this Aizen guy knew a way to get him home. Was there any way in this universe that could get him back to his at all? Ben was snapped out of his thoughts when the doors opened. "Come back inside, Ulquiorra," the one who opened the door said. A bit irked at Ulquiorra's demand, Ben still picked himself and walked back into the room. "Ben-10, Aizen said. "I do not know how to send you back to your original universe." Ben hadn't really expected Aizen to know a way, but disappointment filled him all the same. "However," Aizen said, "it would be cruel of me to not at least find a way to send you back home." Ben raised a brow. "What? You think you can actually find a way to send me back to my universe?" "I believe so," Aizen said, "but it will take time and effort to do so." "Not surprised," Ben said. "These things usually are." "In the meantime," Aizen went on, "since you are here, I would to ask something of you." Oh, here it comes." Ben had a feeling this wasn't going to be free. "A war is coming," Aizen said, "and I could really use your help." "A war? Oh great." Ben just wanted a way to kill his boredom, and instead he got dropped right into a war. Some vacation. "But first," Aizen said quickly, "there are some things you need to understand. Earlier I noticed the glances you gave my troops. No doubt you are curious over the holes in their bodies and the bones they wear." Ben cringed as he looked down at his feet at being caught. "Sorry," he apologized. "There is no need to apologize," Aizen assured him. "Your curiosity is perfectly understandable. But Ben, you must prepare yourself for what I am about to tell you. We are spirits." Ben's head shot up as he stared at Aizen. "What? You're ghosts?" "We are," Aizen confirmed. Ben's jaw dropped, and he found himself at a loss for words. Ghosts? Actual ghosts? The dear departed? Sure, he was used to dealing with a lot strange things, including aliens that were ghost-like in nature, but he had never encountered actual ghosts. "I, along with Jin and Tozen," Jin waved and Tozen nodded as Aizen addressed them, "are soul reapers." "Soul reapers?" Ben asked, repeated. "Is that like the Grim Reaper?" Aizen chuckled, familiar with the living's image of what a reaper looks like. "In a sense, the purpose of soul reapers is to guide souls to the afterlife, known in this universe as Soul Society." "Soul Society," Ben said to himself before looking back at Aizen. "What about hollows?" "That requires a bit more to explain," Aizen said with a chuckle. "So I will give you the basic explanation. You see, when people die in this universe, their spirits have a chain that attaches them to their physical bodies. These chains, known as chains of fate, will keep them bound to their living bodies, but they are capable of being broken. When the chains are broken, they start to corrode through a process known as encroachment. The more a spirit lingers in the land of the living, the more the chain will corrode. When the chain has fully corroded, the soul will transform into a hollow. Hollows are masked, bestial creatures who are guided by instinct to devour souls." Ben felt his blood run cold. Eat souls?" he asked. Then he noticed that several of the occupants in the room were giving him dirty looks. Do not blame them, Ben, Aizen said softly. Hollows are consumed by a void which forms when their transformation is complete. They wish to fill that void, symbolized by holes in their bodies, and will go to extreme lengths to have it filled. It then registered in Ben's mind on why so many people in the room had holes in their bodies. As you may have guessed by now, Aizen said, those you see before you were hollows. Well, that explained why they all looked really angry at him. But then Ben noticed something in Aizen's words. He couldn't help but ask. They are now a Rankar, Aizen elaborated. Hollows who have torn off their masks and regained humanoid appearances. Well, that explained what Arankars were at least. Ben opened his mouth to ask about what this had to do with a war, when Aizen raised a finger to stop him. You're wondering what this has to do with the war I mentioned, Aizen stated, shocking Ben. Okay, was this Aizen guy a mind reader or something? Well, Ben, it is the job of soul reapers to guide souls to soul society so that they do not become hollows and harm other spirits in the first place. But soul society has become corrupted over time. Numerous souls are ignored instead of guided, forcing them to transform into hollows, who are then callously hunted down by the soul reapers instead of being helped. Ben's eyes widened at this shocking revelation. Soul society has also become corrupted within its own walls, Aizen said. Despite being spirits, there are rich and there are poor. There are powerful and there are weak. The rich and the powerful bully the poor and the weak, forcing the latter to live in pathetic conditions while the former living in luxury, doing whatever they please and trotting on any who cross them. Ben clenched his fists. He hated bullies and the corrupted. I couldn't stand by and allow this to continue, Aizen said firmly. So Tozen, Jin, and I defected from Soul Society and made our way to Hukomundo, the land of the Hollows. Someone needed to help these souls, and I was the only one willing to lift a finger to do so. I helped the Hollows become a Rankar, and together we built the Fortress of Lost Notches. But Soul Society has not taken my betrayal kindly. They will do whatever it takes to destroy me and my forces while I intend on overthrowing them and making the world a better place. Aizen looked at Ben, almost imploringly. Ben, I know this is not your universe and therefore not your fight, but I could really use your help in putting an end to Soul Society's corrupting ways and setting things straight. Ben crossed his arms. He hated whenever he got dragged into a war. Usually he was asked to serve as peacemaker with minimal success if any. Taking sides in one didn't really sound like a good idea. Have you tried talking with them? He suggested, though he had a feeling he knew the answer. Soul Society's government and leaders are narrow-minded fools, stuck in their centuries-old traditions, Aizen said, and there seemed to be a hint of disgust in his voice. And they will go to extreme lengths to uphold these laws regardless of practicality or morality. Why, just recently, a Soul Reaper gave some of her power to a human boy in order for him to save his family, but because it is forbidden to give one's power to a human, she was to be executed. What? Ben exploded in shock and outrage. In the end, Soul Society's leaders do not care about saving souls, Aizen said, looking sad as he did. They care more about establishing their authority by any means necessary. Ben exhaled through his nose angrily. Soul Society reminded him of the governments back in his own universe, both on Earth and on other planets. But at the same time, if a Soul Reaper broke the law in order to save people, they couldn't be all bad. There are other Soul Reapers who don't agree with the state of things, Aizen said, once again apparently reading Ben's mind. But trying to change the government from within is futile. Only by tearing down the old ways and starting anew will make a difference. Ben frowned. He could relate to wanting to overthrow corrupted leaders and tyrants, but the question was, how far was Aizen willing to go to achieve his goal? You call yourself a hero, don't you? Aizen added. This may not be your universe, but would you truly turn your back on people in need? And there Aizen went, striking Ben where it would hit him the most. Still, Ben judged his situation in his mind. He needed a way home, Soul Society's corrupted ways disgusted him, and he felt bad for all these Arankar. Their experiences were no doubt horrible ones, and as Aizen said, he was a hero. He couldn't just turn his back on people who needed his help. But what if this was all a ploy to get Ben on his side? Aizen was a very charming and charismatic person, Ben could tell. But at the same time, that reminded him a little too much of Michael Morningstar. Yet if Aizen was telling the truth, then Soul Society needed to be stopped, or at least shown the error of their ways. This was the place people went to after they died, for crying out loud. Ben decided he would go along for now. But he could keep his eye on Aizen and prepare himself in case the Soul Reaper proved to be another backstabber. "All right," Ben said finally. "I'll help you, but I want to make one thing clear." "Yes?" Aizen asked curiously. "I'll help you, but I'll do it my own way," Ben said, giving Aizen a stern glare. "I won't kill anyone in cold blood. I will try to reason with the Soul Reapers if I can, and I will not let innocent lives be endangered." Aizen nodded with a smile. "Those are perfectly acceptable, Ben." Ben sighed. "Aside from that, I'll help you in any way I can." Aizen's smile grew. "Thank you, Ben. I truly do appreciate this." He got off his throne. "Since you will be staying with us, I need to introduce you to my forces." He looked back over at Jin and Tozen. "This is Jin Ikumaru and Tozen Kaname. As I already mentioned, they are fellow Soul Reapers who defected with me after seeing how corrupted Soul Society is." "Nice to meet you, Ben," Jin said, giving Ben a look that made him feel like a snake was eyeing him. "You're really gonna liven up this place, I can tell." "Greetings, Ben Tennyson," Tozen said with a nod of his head. "I am honored to meet another who fights in the name of justice. I look forward to fighting alongside you." Ben just smiled awkwardly. At least he was making a good impression so far. "The Arankar you see before you are known as the Espada and their Fraxian," Aizen said, indicating all the Arankar who were in the room. "Ranked from 10 to 1, they are the most powerful Arankar in Las Notches. My generals, if you will. All of you, introduce yourselves to our new friend." Yami was the first to step forward, and Ben was tempted to take a step back. The guy was huge, as big as several of Ben's best brawlers. Yami smirked down at him. "Yami Largo, Espada no. 10, just like you." Ben tilted his head before he realized that Yami was probably referring to the 10 on his jacket. He briefly wondered what Yami would say if he learned one of Ben's nicknames was BEN10. The next one to step forward had a rather unique appearance. This person wore a dress-like robe that covered their entire body alongside a frilly jacket, and a glove over their left hand. The person's face was covered by a long mask with 8 holes, though the holes were too small for Ben to see any detail of their face. "I am Espada no. 9, Aranero Aruri," the figure said in a deep masculine voice before it spoke in a high-pitched, feminine voice. "Pleased to meet you, Ben Tennyson." Ben stood there, blinking rapidly as Aranero moved out of the way and Shilaporo stepped forward, bowing dramatically. "I am Espada no. 8, Shilaporo grants." He gave Ben an intense look and seemed to smile lewdly. "I am truly happy to meet you." An unnerved Ben said. "Thanks." Shilaporo moved out of the way for the next Espada, but that gaze, almost a smoldering one, never left his face. Ben suppressed a shiver when the next Arankar faced him. This one was a tall, muscular, and dark-skinned man who wore an outfit reminiscent of a martial arts outfit. He had lines running down his bald head to his eyes, 3 triangles under his chin, what appeared to be a mohawk made out of bones, a necklace made out of teeth, and skull-shaped earrings. "I am Espada no. 7, Zamori Roro," the man informed Ben in a deep voice. "Be honored, Ben Tennyson, to work alongside Lord Aizen." Grimjow was next, and Ben felt warning alarms in his head ringing. Like the sinister, predatory grin Grimjow was flashing wasn't bad enough. "Grimjow Jigger Jackass, Espada no. 6, Grimjow said, his grin growing. "I'm really looking forward to seeing what you can do with that gauntlet of yours." Ben could already tell that this Grimjow guy was going to be a handful in the future. Enoitra was up next. Enoitra Gilga, he stuck out his tongue to reveal a big black number 5 tattooed on it. "The 5th Espada. Grimjow's not the only one who's anxious to see what you can do." "Oh great. There were 2 of them." Ulquiorra stepped forward next. "You already know who I am. Ulquiorra Cypher, Espada no. 4. And that was all he said before moving on. Ben's eyes widened as his jaw dropped as the next person came. She was, without a doubt, one of the most beautiful women he had ever seen, and he had seen a lot during his adventures. She was tall, with dark skin, yellow blonde hair, aqua eyes, and thick eyebrows. Her shirt had a high collar that covered the lower half of her face, while the bottom was short enough that the lower half of her very large melons were exposed, with a zipper that ran from the bottom of the jack upward. The shirt sleeves completely covered her arms, which were currently crossed underneath her chest, with black glove-like extensions at her fingers. There was also slits in her upper part of her pants, showing a fair amount of her shapely-looking thighs. Was this woman some sort of exhibitionist? Realizing that she was looking right at him, Ben quickly snapped his jaw shut. "Greetings, Ben the woman said in a surprisingly formal tone that really didn't match her lack of modesty. "I am Espada no. 3, Tia Harable." Feeling a bit awkward, Ben smiled at her. "Nice to meet you." With a nod, Harable moved one. Ben couldn't help watching her as she did. Then he suddenly felt someone watching him. He turned his head and saw 3 female Arankar giving him looks that screamed bloody murder. Ben didn't know who they were, but he guessed they were close to Harable and didn't like the way he had been eyeing her. Uh-oh. Next came Berrigan, who was eyeing Ben up and down though looking very unimpressed. Berrigan Luisenbarn. And then he went back to the biggest group of non-Espada Arankar. He hadn't said what his rank was, but it was obvious he was Espada no. 2. He must not have been fond of his rank. And last was Stalk. "Yo," he said tiredly, "Espada no. 1, Coyote Stark." And then he walked back to a little girl Arankar with green hair, a horned helmet, and an outfit not really suited for one of her age. "Now you are familiar with the Espada," Aizen said. "I would like for you to work alongside one of them so that they can fill you in on the more elaborate details of this universe." The Espada had various reactions to this. Shiloporo looked thrilled, Grimjow and Enoitra had sadistic smirks on their faces, Berrigan looked like he was ready to explode if Ben was assigned to him. Arnero's expression was uncertain due to his mask. Yami looked like he really didn't care, while Stark, Harable, and Ulquiorra all had neutral expressions. Aizen weighed his options carefully. While there were many ways he could easily force Ben to join him, he found it much more amusing to have the boy choose to join him. Shiloporo, Grimjow, and Enoitra were out of the question, for obvious reasons. Berrigan? Absolutely not. In all honesty, Aizen figured the best ones to partner Ben up with would be Ulquiorra, Harable, and Stark. Out of those 3, Harable and Stark had the most tragic of pasts, which would increase their chances of making Ben sympathetic to their cause. At the moment though, it looked like Harable's Fraxian wanted to tear Ben apart, so this left him with only one logical option. "Static," Aizen said. "Ben will be under your supervision." Stark sighed and scratched his head. "Sure thing." Shiloporo deflated in disappointment while Enoitra and Grimjow scowled. Ben was a bit surprised. He was going to be spending time with the most powerful Espada. Even though he didn't know much about the guy, the fact that he was the most powerful Arankar in Las Notches was pretty cool. "Now," Aizen said, "everyone, please return to your chambers." He smiled. "I believe that's enough excitement for today." And with that, the Espada dispersed, though many sent passing glances at Ben as they left, such as Shiloporo, Grimjow, Enoitra, and those 3 girls who were with Harable to name a few. Soon, the only people left were Ben, Aizen, Tozen, Jin, Stalk, and the little girl Arankar. She was wearing white briefs with a black line in the middle, arm warmers, fur-lined, knee-high boots, an open vest with a high collar, and a hole in the center of her stomach. On her light green-haired head was a horned helmet with the left horn either broken or cut off. The left side of her helmet covered her left eye, with a flame design above the left eye hole while her pink right eye was still visible. "Nice to meet ya," the girl said with a big grin. "The name's Lilinet Gingerbuck, and it looks like you're going to be sticking with us for a while." Ben chuckled. "I guess so." Stark sighed as he rubbed his head. "What's with that attitude?" Lilinetta snapped, suddenly kicking Stalk in the rear and shocking Ben. "Lord Aizen has given you a task. Show some motivation, you lazy ass." Aside from hearing a little girl use such language, Ben was baffled as to why Stalk was letting this little kid kick him around. Oh, enough. Oh, all right, already," Stark snapped. Lilinette took a step back and put her hands on her hips. "Come on. Time for us to head back." She turned on her heels and already headed off. I'm coming, Stark mumbled, following after her. Geez, what a pain. Ben was too stunned to actually say anything, so he was content with following them in silence, starting to wonder if he should have been assigned to a different espada after all. Once they left, Jin turned toward Aizen. Very well played, he complimented. You're still a great an actor as ever. I hardly needed to act, Aizen said, suddenly becoming smug and aloof. I never lied when I told Ben about the corruption of Soul Society. Though you did conveniently leave out our own little involvements, Jin pointed out. Ben won't need to know that, Aizen said confidently. He only needs to know what will make him most useful to me. You're not worried of what will happen if he finds out the real truth? Jin asked, unable to hide his curiosity. Aizen chuckled. Ben-10 is unique, and I don't know the full extent of his abilities. But if he were to turn against me, then I shall deal with him. Even though Aizen said this with confidence, he still couldn't help but wonder about Ben's full potential. For all Aizen knew, Ben was a literal one-man army. So the traitorous Soul Reaper decided he needed to learn everything he could about the boy, to be properly prepared if in the event they did face each other. And Aizen already had an idea in mind. Stick with us or you'll get lost, Lillinet said as they walked along down the hallways of Las Notches. No kidding, Ben grumbled as he looked around the seemingly endless hallway. Do you guys have a directory or something for this place? Nah, Lillinet said playfully. We just know our way around. Lucky you, Ben muttered. How far is your room anyway? Lillinet grinned at him. Room? Each of the Espada get their own palace. Ben blinked. Palace? Really? He looked up at the ceiling. Well, this place is pretty big. Kinda cool that you can each have your own palace. Stalk shrugged nonchalantly. Yeah. Lillinet glared at Stalk before sighing. Good grief? She looked back over at Ben. Don't mind Stalk. He's a lazy bum, but he definitely deserves to be the prime Espada. Ben just smiled and shrugged at her. So, Lillinet eyed the Ultimatrix. How many aliens do you have in that thing? Ben grinned at her. Plenty, he replied slyly. Lillinet scowled at him, though her young face made it look more like a pout. Come on, she coaxed. How many can you turn into? Give it a rest, Lillinet, Stark half-heartedly snapped at her. Oh, come on, Stark, Lillinet whined. I'm betting you're curious too. A little, Stark admitted. But it looks like he's not going to tell us, and it's too much work to try and get it out of him. You lazy ass, Lillinet kicked Static in the back of his leg, causing him to stumble forward and fall over. Lillinet followed this up by jumping onto his back and continued doing so like he was a trampoline while Stark protested. Ben couldn't help raising a brow at the sight, the most powerful Arankar, and he was letting himself get kicked around by a little kid. Despite this, Ben had enough experience to know appearances can be deceiving. Still, he wondered just what Stack was capable of to earn his rank. After a few more jumps, Lillinet leaped off Stark's back, said Arankar, let out a sigh of relief at this, and landed in front of Ben. The hero felt a bit uncomfortable with the scrutinizing gaze the little girl was giving him. What? He asked with an awkward grin. Do I have something on my face? I'm trying to figure you out, Lillinet said, narrowing her eye at him. What do you mean? Ben inquired. Humans usually can't see us because of their low spiritual energy, Lillinet said. Ben tilted his head. Spiritual energy? Yeah, Shinigami, humans, hollows, Arankar, we've all got it, Lillinet said. But like I said, spirit energy from humans is really low, and they're not usually spiritual aware, so I'm wondering why you can see us. Ben wanted to retort, but he was too curious by Lillinet's words. So Shinigami, hollows, and Arankar were completely invisible to average humans. Then how was he able to see them exactly? Maybe it's because he's from another universe, Stark said drowsily as he stayed on to the floor, his eyes closed. Lillinet glared at him. How does that make any sense? Stark gave a half-hearted shrug. Maybe there's something about the nature of his universe that lets him see us while he's in ours. Lillinet made a face. That sounds completely ridiculous, Stark, she said dryly. Hey, I'm not a scientist, a nonchalant Stark said, turning over so that his back was to her. If you want better answers, go talk to Shalaporo. Lillinet cringed. Apparently she wasn't any fonder of the 8th Espada than Ben was. Still, Stark could be onto something. After all, spirit energy sounded like it was this universe's equivalent to mana. But was that really all there was to it? Ben decided he would stop worrying for now and tackle it at a later time. "All right," Lillianette suddenly cried, startling Ben and making Stark flinch. "Up and at Stark. We're not even at our chambers yet, and you're already lying down." "You're the reason I'm on the floor in the first place," Stark mumbled. Nonetheless, he pushed himself back on his feet and brushed himself off. Ben chuckled awkwardly at the strange comedy playing before him. He just knew spending time with these two was going to be interesting. "And this is our room," Lillianette declared. Ben found himself in a wide, circular room. Although, the hero felt it was kind of underwhelming for the number 1 espada. All that was really here was a bunch of pillows thrown together in a big pile. Stark made his way over to the pile and laid down. "Make yourself at home," Stark said nonchalantly. "Now, if it's all right with you two, I'm gonna go back to sleep." Lillianette rolled her visible eye. "He was having a nap before you came along and Lord Aizen called the espada together," she explained to Ben. Ben scratched the back of his head as he stood there awkwardly. "Ooh, sorry." "Don't worry about it," Stark weakly waved his hand before dropping it on the pillows. "Now good night." Stanek closed his eyes. Ben stared at him for a moment when the Arankar started lightly snoring. "Huh," was all Ben could say. "Yeah, that's usually what he does when there isn't something happening," Lillianette grinned at Ben. "I told ya he was a lazy bum." "So, do you guys just lay around here?" Ben couldn't help but ask. Lillianette grinned sheepishly. "Sorta." "Sounds pretty boring," Ben commented. Lillianette shrugged. "It is pretty boring, but hey, it's bearable." Then her grin got bigger, almost Cheshire-like. "But things are gonna be more exciting now that you're here." Ben chuckled weakly, thinking back to Shylaporo, Enoitra, and Grimjow. "I guess so." Lillianette smirked. "Yeah, I saw how eager Enoitra and Grimjow looked when they were talking to you. Those guys think they're better than everyone else, so they like trying to pick fights to prove it." Ben slumped. "And they're gonna try to pick fights with me, aren't they?" Lillianette laughed. "Probably." Ben pinched the bridge of his nose. "Terrific. It also looks like you're already on the hit list of Haribel's Fraxian." Lillianette laughed. Ben raised a brow. "Fraxian? Oh yeah, you don't know about that." Lillianette sat down on the floor cross-legged. Ben joined her. "See, Fraxian are weaker Arankar the Espada take as underlings. Those 3 with Haribel are Apache, Mila Rose, and Sung Sun. They're really loyal and really protective of her." "I noticed," Ben muttered, thinking of the death glares they had been sending his way. "But they argue almost all the time." Lillianette threw her head back and her arms out for emphasis. "Usually Apache says something stupid. Mila Rose chews her out for it. They start yelling at each other. Sung Sun mocks them both, and then they both yell at her." Ben blinked. "Wow. And they really do this all the time?" "Yep," Lillianette nodded. "Just wait until you actually talk with them. You'll get the idea." Ben gave her a weak smile. He felt it was best for his health if he gave those 3 a wide berth right now. "So, how come Yami, Araniro, Shelapor, Zamari, and Ulquiorra don't have Fraxian?" he asked. "Can an Espada choose not to?" "Uh-huh," Lillianette answered. "Oh, and Shylaporo has Fraxian. But he has over a dozen or something." "A dozen?" Ben parroted in surprise. "Yeah, I think he experiments on them or something in his lab," Lillianette replied. The fact that she was so casual about it caused a chill to bend down Ben's spine. "Anyway, aside from Haribel's Fraxian, the only other ones you should really watch out for are Grimjow and Barragan's Fraxian. Grimo's Fraxian are a bunch of thugs. They might try to pick a fight with you if he wants." Ben groaned, picturing Grimjow's group trying to jump him while walking down the hallway or something. "What about Barragan's?" Lillianette scoffed. "Those guys are doormats, always kissing up to him and stuff. But if you do something to anger Barragan and he orders his Fraxian on you, they'll do it in order to please him." "Oh, this is going to be lots of fun," Ben grumbled. "Don't worry," Lillianette assured him. "Lord Aizen can deal with them. Besides, as long as you're with us, there's no way they'll try to mess with you." Ben looked over at the snoring Stark. While he was still certain Stark was probably hiding some crazy power, Seeing him lying around like that wasn't exactly filling him with confidence. So, Lillinet said, getting up in Ben's face and causing the teen to reflexively lean away from her. Mind showing me some of your aliens now? Ben scrunched his face up as he weighed his options. Since he was going to be working with these guys, they were bound to see more of his aliens sooner or later. Besides, he had plenty to show without revealing his whole hand, and he had a feeling Lillinet was simply curious rather than trying to pry information out of him. Not like there was anything better to do anyway. Why not? He said finally. He cast an eye over at the still snoozing stack. Know someplace we could go without disturbing him? Lillinet gave him that toothy grin again. I know just the place. Follow me. She grabbed Ben's arm and made a break for the door, Ben having no choice but to follow her. Behind them, Stack just slept on obliviously. Where are we going? Ben asked as Lillinet dragged him down another hallway. You'll see, Lillinet replied playfully, causing the wielder of the Ultimatrix to worry immensely. She laughed when she saw the concerned look on his face. Relax, will ya? I'm not leading you to a trap. We're going outside. Outside? Ben repeated. What about Runaganga? Is he gonna be okay with us out there? Lillinet chuckled. Oh, right. You don't know about the other outside yet? Other outside? Ben inquired. You'll see when we get there, was all Lillinet said, leaving Ben puzzled. How far is it? He decided to ask instead. Lillinet frowned as she pondered Ben's question. Pretty far. We might need to speed things up. What are you? Ben started to ask, when all of a sudden he heard a boom and the world seemed to speed past him. Everything a great big blur, not unlike whenever he used one of his speedy aliens. Ben tried to ask what was going on, but he was so caught off guard by this development that the words failed him. Suddenly another boom filled Ben's ears, and he found his vision completely filled with light. Ah! The hero cried, rubbing his eyes fiercely from the sudden brightness. Sorry about that, he heard Lillinet say sheepishly. Guess I got a little carried away with my Sanito. Sanito? Ben asked, still rubbing his eyes. Yeah, all a Rankar can do Sanito, Lillinet said. We can use it to go really fast. Huh, and all a Rankar can do this? Ben inquired as the spots began fading. Lillinet huffed. Of course. It's one of our natural abilities. Hey, cut me some slack, Ben said as he shook his head. I hardly know anything about you guys. Now that his eyes had adjusted, he took a look at his surroundings. He stared in confusion. Just as Lillinet said, they were indeed outside, but it was extremely bright and sunny out. Ben looked around. The dome was nowhere in sight, and instead there were several buildings he didn't recognize. Lillinet grinned at Ben's baffled look. Surprised. Yeah, Ben said as he looked around. Where are we? Why is it suddenly day? This doesn't look anything like when I was outside the first time. Lillinet chuckled. Because we're still in the dome. Ben blinked at her. We are? Yeah, Lord Aizen created this fake sky and sun inside of Las Notches, Lillinet explained. So this is what you meant by the other outside, Ben figured. Lillinet grinned. That's right. I did say we were going outside. I just didn't say where we were going outside of. Ben chuckled as he realized Lillinet's little trick. Okay, you got me there. He looked up at the apparently fake sky and whistled. Wow, Aizen sure did a convincing job. It looks so real. He looked back at Lillinet. But why'd he make it? Lillinet shrugged. Nobody really knows. Some think he simply created it to bring light to Hugo Mundo's darkness. Others think it's some sort of fancy surveillance system so that he always knows what's going on. Ben frowned as he stared back up at the sky. A surveillance system even in this place, huh? Ben had to admit that was pretty clever. So, Lillinet said, turning towards Ben, show me some of your aliens. Ben bit his lip as he looked at his Ultimatrix, Lillinet, and then the sky. Sure, these guys would be seeing more of his aliens sooner or later, but the idea of being watched while showing them off reminded him way too much of Harem and his stalker robot. He really needed to be careful. All right, Ben said as he activated the Ultimatrix. Lillinet watched in awe as the dial popped up and a green hologram of Ben's aliens were displayed. Ben scrolled through, deciding to settle on an alien Aizen would probably already know about. He slammed the dial down and Lillinet closed her eyes as Ben was engulfed in green light. Once the light faded, Lillinet saw Cannonbolt standing in front of her. "Whoa," Lillinet said as she looked the Arbarian Pellerota up and down. "Who's this guy?" "I call him Cannonbolt," the newly transformed hero declared in a much deeper voice. Cannonbolt seemed like a good choice. Aizen already knew about him, and despite being one of Ben's top powerhouses, the guy did have a limited moveset. Watch this. Cannonbolt curled up into a ball. Lillinet, extremely unimpressed, crossed her arms and frowned. "Is that all he can do?" she asked in disappointment. "Curl up into a—" Her words died when Cannonbolt began spinning in place before shooting off with such force that the small Arankar was blasted off her feet and sent sprawling onto the sand. "Hey!" Lillinet yelled indignantly. "What was that for?" Cannonbolt chuckled as he uncurled. "Sorry about that. Got a little carried away that." Lillinet grumbled as she got back on her feet and started brushing the sand off of her clothes. "So you just curl up into a ball and shoot yourself at people?" "Pretty much," Cannonbolt said, shrugging his massive shoulders. Lillinet scrunched her face up. "I don't know. Not really impressive." The hero smirked. "Don't underestimate Cannonbolt. Yoriichi can testify to that." Lillinet's eye widened. "You used this guy on Yoriichi?" "Yeah," Cannonbolt scratched his chin. "That reminds me. I wonder if Aizen let her off the hook." Lillinet shrugged. "Probably. Lord Aizen can be really lenient at times. Besides, you put in a good word for her, so I don't see why he wouldn't. You should probably stay away from her though. She's a really sore loser." "Would it help if I said I was sorry?" Cannonbolt asked hopefully. Lillinet scoffed. "Doubt it. I think the only thing that would satisfy her would be your death or something." Cannonbolt gulped, unable to shake the feeling that Lillinet just might be serious. "Well, that's just great. Is there any girl here who doesn't already hate my guts?" "I don't," Lillinet said, giving him an encouraging smile. Cannonbolt chuckled. "Well, that's a start." "Come on," Lillinet said suddenly. "Show me another alien. Oh, did you use any of them to get past Runaganga?" "Sure did," Cannonbolt said before touching the Ultimatrix dial on his chest. In a flash of green light, Armadillo stood in his place. "Whoa," Lillinet stared at the Talpedan. "Who's this guy and what can he do?" "I call this guy Armadillo," the wielder of the Ultimatrix replied. "As for what he can do—" Armadillo dove into the ground. Lillinet looked back and forth, trying to figure out where he went, when all of a sudden he burst out of the ground right behind her. The action startled the small Arankar, who yelped in shock as she went diving headfirst into the sand. "What? Again?" Lillinet snarled angrily at a chuckling Armadillo as the Talpedan shook sand out of his armor. "Sorry about that," Armadillo said as he shook some sand out of his helmeted head. "I couldn't resist." Lillinet grit her teeth, and she picked herself off from the ground yet again. "So this guy's specialty is digging? I can see why you used him to escape Runaganga. But is that all he can do?" "Nope," Armadillo said. "If you couldn't already tell by his physique, he's one of my strongest aliens. His fists are like jackhammers." He then chuckled at his own inside joke. Lillinet stared at Armadillo, then at his piston-packed arms. She had a feeling that when Armadillo said his fists were like jackhammers, he meant it literally. "So," Armadillo said, "I've shown you some of my aliens. Why don't you show me some of what you can do, Lillinet?" The Arankar blinked in surprise. "Really? You want to see what I can do?" "Sure," Armadillo said. "If we're going to be working together, it's only fair I know what my allies can do so I don't get in the way." That, and it would allow Ben to see what these Arankar were truly capable of. Lillinet smirked. "All right, just watch what I can do." Lillinet turned her head away from Armadillo, as if she was looking at something. Armadillo looked in the same direction but couldn't spot anything. He was about to ask her what she was doing when a glowing orb of green light started gathering around her left eye. Suddenly, that orb erupted into a beam that Lillinet shot off in the distance. "Whoa," was all Armadillo could say to that. Lillinet smirked at him again. "That's my Zero. And yeah, in case you're wondering, all Arankar can do that. We gather spirit energy and release it into a big blast. Okay, so a Rancor had super speed and energy blasts as part of their repertoire. Oh, and sword fighters too. Now, Lilinet said, interrupting his musing, watch this. Her hand went over to her broken stub of a horn. Armadillo's eyes widened as it seemed to be glowing, and some sort of object that resembled a hilt was starting to emerge from it. Lilinet grabbed the hilt-like object and proceeded to pull. Sure enough, it was a hilt, attached to a wicked-looking scimitar. I did not see that one coming, Armadillo said. What? None of your aliens come with weapons? Lilinet asked, stabbing her weapon into the sand and leaning against it. Nope, Armadillo admitted. Unless they're part of their body like this guy's. He flexed his arms for emphasis. Lilinet scratched her chin at this, but then shrugged. No big deal. A lot of Rancor lose their weapons when they go into their released state. Released state? Armadillo asked. He tapped the Ultimatrix dial on his chest and was transformed back into Ben in another flash of light. Sure, Asmoth said he stay as his aliens longer, but why waste power if you weren't going to use it? Lilinet, who had shielded her eyes from the flash, glared at him. Do you always have to do that every time you transform? Ben shrugged. That's just the way it works. If you want somebody to complain to, you'd have to complain to the guy who made it. Lilinet grumbled before clearing her throat. Anyway, did Yoriichi transform when she fought you? Ben nodded. Yeah, she said some sort of chant or something and suddenly changed into this bird-like creature. That's an Rancor's resurrection, Lilinet explained. See, when a hollow becomes an Rancor, their main hollow powers get sealed into a weapon, usually a sword, but there are some exceptions like Yoriichi's giant yo-yo. At least Ben wasn't alone in thinking that way about Yoriichi's weapon. So when an Rancor wants to use their full power, they go into this released state, Ben figured. Lilinet nodded. Yep, gotta say though, I'm pretty impressed you were able to hold your own against even a Priver in Espada, let alone one in their released state. Priver in Espada? Ben asked. Is that some sort of rank before Espada or something? Lilinet laughed. Oh no. Priver and Espada are a Rancor who got kicked out of the Espada for one reason or another. Usually because a more powerful Rancor came along and took their place, or they did something that made Lord Aizen demote them from the group entirely. So there were Espada, and then there were Priver and Espada. He wondered how powerful Yoriichi was compared to the rest of them. Plus, these released states. So, Lilinet, Ben said, what's your released state like? Lilinet suddenly frozen, her eye darting back and forth. My released state is a little different from other Rancor. Ben was surprised at how suddenly hesitant Lilinet was being. Was her released state embarrassing or something? Okay, he said soothingly. You don't have to show me if you don't want to. Lilinet's eye shot back at him. Really? Ben chuckled as he held his hands out. If it bothers you that much, I won't press you. Lilinet seemed to relax at that. You know what, Ben? I never thought I would say this about a human, but you're all right. Ben chuckled again as he scratched the back of his neck. I'll take it. The two laughed together. Ben had to admit, it was nice to at least make a semi-friend in this unfamiliar place. But then Lilinet saw something behind Ben that cut her laughter short. Oh, Ben? Yeah? Ben asked as his chuckles started dying down. Lilinet gave a nervous smile. Remember when we were talking about Haribel's Faxione? Ben slumped. They're standing right behind me, aren't they? Lilinet slowly nodded. Ben turned around. And sure enough, Haribel's Faxione were standing not too far away from where they were. Ben took this moment to get a better look at these girls. The first girl had heterochromia, with an ice blue right eye and an amber left eye that also sported a red outline around it. She also had jaw-length black hair and a horned, band-like object on her head. Her uniform had shoulder-length sleeves with black cuffs and a V-neck line. Gloves and collars over her wrists completed her look. The second girl was dark-skinned, with green eyes and sporting long, thick, wavy brown hair as well as large melons. Her hollow hole was located right between her melons and her navel. She wore a white necklace around her neck and a 3-section crown that wrapped around her head. The rest of her outfit consisted of a white skirt and multiple armor covering her melons and upper arms, along with gauntlets on her forearms and a broadsword as her weapon. All in all, Ben thought she looked like an Amazon straight out of Greek mythology. The last one was a slender girl with long, flowing, olive green hair and lavender eyes with long eyelashes. Ben could spot 3 pink dots located just below her right one. On the right side of her bangs were 3 extensions that looked like hair clips. She also wore a furry black necklace around her neck, and her outfit consisted of a long white dress with long sleeves, which extended well past her hands. The sleeves both sported single slit, and she bore 2 thin belts that crisscrossed around her waist. Judging from the glares that all 3 were sending his way, they obviously didn't come here to strike up friendly conversation. Hey there, Ben said, giving them a small wave. So, come here often, he joked, hoping against hope that a little humor would lift the mood up. Judging from the sound of Lilith smacking her forehead behind him and the other girls narrowing their eyes, it didn't work. The one with the horn stomped her way towards him, and before Ben could do anything, he was grabbed by the shirt and pulled to where the 2 of them were just a few inches away from each other. "You've got some nerve, human," the girl snarled. "Who do you think you are?" Ben held his hands out in peace. "Whoa, hey, hold on a second. I'm not looking for any trouble here." "Oh, you're not looking for any trouble?" the girl mocked. "Well, too bad. You should have thought of that before you ogled Lady Harrible the way you did." Sheesh, Lilith wasn't kidding. "Apache," the Amazon said sternly. "Remember, we're only here to teach him a lesson. Lord Aizen still believes he can be useful to us." "Shut up, Mila Rose," the now named Apache yelled at the also named Mila Rose. "I am just gonna teach him a lesson. I don't need someone like you trying to tell me what to do." "What was that?" Mila Rose snarled. "Why don't you say that to my face?" "Gladly," Apache shot back. My, the third girl, obviously Sung Sun, said as she covered her mouth with one of her sleeves. "Look at the 2 of you, yelling at each other and making complete fools of yourselves in front of the human. I know you 2 can't help it, but please try not to make me look bad as well." "Stay out of this, Sung Sun," Apache and Mila Rose yelled at her simultaneously as Sung Sun looked off the side, as if ignoring them. "This doesn't concern you." Ben stared in wide-eyed amazement at the scene before him. It was just like Lilith said. He looked over at Lilith, who grinned back at his reaction. "See," she said. "I told ya." This drew the attention of the other 3 girls. "Told him what, Lilith?" Apache demanded. "I saw how chummy you were getting with this human." "Oh, I just told him how you 3 always argue," Lilith said with a smirk. "Including just how you argue. You 3 are so predictable." Mila Rose scowled at Lilith, who just smiled cheekily back at her. "And it happened just like she said," Ben couldn't help pointing out. "Wow. So, if you 3 argue all the time, why are you even on the same team?" Unfortunately, this brought him back on the receiving end of Apache's anger. "That's none of your business, human. The only thing you need to know is that we're gonna make you pay for looking at Lady Harrible like she's something for you to slobber over." "Wait, what?" Ben's eyes bugged out. "Hey, wait a second. You've got the wrong idea. Yeah, maybe I think she's really attractive, but I didn't." This turned out to be the wrong thing to say as he found the tip of Mila Rose's sword pointed right at his face. "Watch your words carefully, human," Mila Rose warned him coldly. "We will not tolerate you speaking anything ill of our leader." Yeesh. This was beyond just loyalty and protectiveness. These girls practically worshipped Harrible. "Look," Ben said firmly, "I'm sorry if I came off as rude, but I wasn't trying to be. Your leader is a really gorgeous woman. I couldn't help but notice that." Apache's grip on his shirt tightened. "That's all, honestly." "It better be," Sung Sun said. "No man is worthy of Lady Harrible, so I suggest you get any sort of notions out of your head." Okay, this was getting ridiculous. "I wasn't thinking anything like that," Ben argued. "Just because I think she's good-looking doesn't mean I'm thinking about asking her out or something." "Oh, so now you think she's not good enough for you, is that it?" Apache said. "Oh, for the love of—" "No, that's not it at all," Ben said. "Look, just because I think Harrible is—" "That's Lady Harrible," Apache snapped. "Say her name with respect." Will you let speak for just 1 minute? Ben shouted, taking all 4 girls by surprise. Ben took a deep breath before speaking in an even tone. Now look. I am sorry if I was disrespectful to Lady Harable. I didn't mean to, and I'm not trying to be. It was all just one big misunderstanding. Heh, I don't see what the big deal is. Everyone turned to see none other than OMNITRIX standing behind them, watching the scene play out with great amusement. All 4 girls fixed a glare at him. Ben's eyes were more focused on the strange weapon OMNITRIX had slung over his shoulders. Attached to a long, black handle were 2 huge blades that slightly resembled crescent moons, stuck together at their backs. At the other end of the handle was a large loop chain that connected to OMNITRIX's waist. What kind of weapon was that? OMNITRIX, Apache spat. So, OMNITRIX said as his eye rolled over each of them. Getting acquainted with our new guest, are we? He turned his eye towards Ben now, and it was all Ben could to suppress a shudder. Just being near this guy made him feel all kinds of wrong. You're quite the ladies' man, aren't you? Something like that, Ben muttered, Apache still gripping his shirt tightly. What are you doing here, OMNITRIX? Mila Rose questioned, the grip on her sword tightening. OMNITRIX just sneered at her, showing he wasn't intimidated in the least. I just wanted to see how our new teammate was doing, he replied, though that unsettling smile of his strongly implied other intentions. And I couldn't help overhearing the bad rap you're giving him just because he was giving Harable the eye. Apache ground her teeth. You can't really blame him though, OMNITRIX chuckled. I mean, with the way she dresses, she's begging for men to stop and stare at her. Showing off her legs and her melons like that? Someone really wants some attention. Of course, if she wanted to, my door's always open. Ben scowled at OMNITRIX's lewd comments. Lilynette began moving back. She knew what was going to happen if the angry looks on Harable's Frexione were anything to go by. Watch your mouth, OMNITRIX, Apache yelled. Espada or not, how dare you badmouth Lady Harable? Apache, Mila Rose hissed fiercely. She too despised OMNITRIX's blatant disrespect, but she was also smart enough to know OMNITRIX was way out of their weight class. OMNITRIX's toothy smile grew and his visible narrowed. Ben had a bad feeling. It's not my fault she's a shameless slut. Oh, that did it. All common sense for those 3 flew right out the door as Apache, Mila Rose, and Sung Sun's faces screamed bloody murder. Howling with rage, Apache released Ben and lunged forward at the 5th Espada. Mila Rose and Sung Sun went from furious to panic-stricken, Apache's actions snapping them out of their own rage. Apache, Mila Rose cried. Don't be stupid, Sung Sun shouted. Apache cocked her fist back, looking ready to deck OMNITRIX right in the face. But with surprising speed, OMNITRIX struck her with his strange weapon, knocking her to the ground. Apache, Mila Rose yelled while Sung Sun's eyes widened. Lilynette winced at the sight. Ben froze, his mind still trying to wrap around what had just happened. Both at the fact that Apache had been badly, and the fact that OMNITRIX swung that thing around like it was nothing. Guess Ben could add super strength to the list. OMNITRIX's blow had done a number on Apache. The poor girl was in a lot of pain. Her arm was possibly broken, and her body was too stunned to move as OMNITRIX towered over her. Pathetic, OMNITRIX hissed in delight. Figures Harable would have such weaklings as her Frexione. But that's all you can expect from women. Ben blinked rapidly. So this guy wasn't just a perverted creep, he was sexist too. Damn you, Mila Rose yelled. She and Sung Sun charged now. Mila Rose raised her sword high while Sung Sun produced a sigh from her sleeve. OMNITRIX almost lazily battered them to the side with another swing of his weapon, sending them sprawling to the ground. Even if they hated his guts, there was no way Ben was going to sit there and let them get knocked around like this. He quickly activated the Ultimatrix and began scrolling through, trying to find the best alien to put this jerk in his place. Luckily, OMNITRIX wasn't paying attention, and he needed to take advantage of that as quickly as possible. This is just sad, OMNITRIX said, looking at each of Harable's Fraxion. You 3 are all bark and no bite. Okay, this guy was really getting on Ben's nerves and spurred him on to scroll through his aliens faster. Apache weakly tried pushing herself back up. OMNITRIX saw this and frowned. He raised a leg and proceeded to stomp on her, causing her to cry out in pain. Apache, Mila Rose yelled from her spot in the sand. and Neutra raised his foot to stomp on Apache again, so caught up in his sadism that he failed to notice a green flash of light right beside him. He brought his foot back down, only for it to collide with a large, green crystal that suddenly erupted from the ground, shielding Apache from any more harm. All the Arrancar stared. What the Neutra started to say until something rammed into him from his side. The blow was powerful enough to knock him flat off his feet and sprawling onto the sand just like his 3 victims. Angrily, Neutra sat up, determined to find out who had just attacked him. His eye widened as he stared at his new assailant. Standing before him was a crystalline creature with an indigo body, with a face and muscular arms made of green crystals, along with 2 spikes that protruded from his shoulders and 2 smaller ones that protruded from his chest, and the dial of Ben's Ultimatrix in between. T. Tennyson? And Neutra wondered. The alien grinned at him. In this form I like to be called Diamond Head. Suddenly he shifted his body into a fighting stance. And if it's a fight you're looking for, I can fill the part. Apache, Mila Rose, and Sung Sun all stared at Diamond Head in shock. After everything they had done, he was defending them. Why? As if voicing their thoughts, and Neutra laughed. You're protecting them. Why? They yelled at you, threatened you. Why would you want to help them at all? Diamond Head narrowed his eyes as he held his fists up. Because I'm a hero, and helping people is what I do. And Neutra laughed even louder. That's right. Apparently you're a superhero. He clutched his side in amusement. Well, here's something you should know. Hero. In Hukomundo, it's kill or be killed. There are no heroes. Diamond Head simply smirked at him in response. Then I guess that makes me Hukomundo's first. And Neutra's merry attitude quickly changed into an annoyed scowl at Diamond Head's defiance. Lillianette, Diamond Head called over his shoulder, startling the little girl. Yeah, she asked. Help get these 3 out of here, Diamond Head instructed her. I'll deal with this guy. Are you insane? Lillianette protested. He's the 5th Espada. Saruchi was nothing compared to him. Just do it, Diamond Head yelled, startling Lillianette further. She was going to yell at the Petrosapian for assuming he could tell her what to do, but her rant died on her lips when Diamond Head turned his head slightly in her direction, giving her a fixed look that clearly showed he was not in the mood for arguments. All right, she said in resignation. I'm going. She ran over to where Mila Rose and Sung Sun were, no doubt finding it easier to get them up than the much more wounded Apache. Come on you two, get up. He's really going to fight Neutra, Mila Rose whispered, staring at Diamond Head. For us. Yeah, I don't get it either, Lillianette said, giving the other Arrancar a slight kick, causing Mila Rose to yelp and glare daggers at her, but Lillianette was nonplussed. Well, move your ass. Mila Rose grumbled, but knew better than to argue with Stark's charge. She picked herself up just as Sung Sun was doing the same. The 3 used their Sonido to appear next to Apache, behind the crystal. Sung Sun and Mila Rose picked up their battered teammate with a surprising amount of gentleness before fleeing. Neutra paid them no mind. After all, he had a more interesting opponent to face now. Diamond Head braced himself. He didn't know what Neutra was capable of, and since this guy was the 5th most powerful Arrancar, he probably had some nasty tricks up his sleeve. I was hoping I'd get to fight you, Neutra said gleefully. I honestly didn't expect it to be so soon, but I'm not complaining. Not complaining about losing? Diamond Head taunted. Works for me. Neutra's toothy smile grew, having a feeling that he was going to get a real fight on his hands. Show me what you got, hero. And without further ado, the 2 combatants charged. Neutra raised his arm, aiming to bring his massive weapon down his new foe. Diamond Head saw this and leaped forward, ramming into Neutra and knocking him down again. The Petrosapian grinned smugly at this. That weapon's pretty useless if you manage to get in close enough. Much to his annoyance, Neutra just chuckled as he picked himself up. Not bad, but a little disappointing. Come on, hero, try to make this fight interesting. Why don't ya? Neutra charged again. Diamond Head braced himself for an attack when suddenly the Espada disappeared. Before Diamond Head could figure out where he went, a powerful force struck him and sent him sprawling across the sand. Shaking his head, Diamond Head looked up to see Neutra smirking smugly at him. Right, that Sonido thing. Come on, hero, Enoitra taunted. That can't be all you can do. Diamond Head looked around. No sign of Lilinet, Apache, Mila Rose, or Sung Sun. Good, they had managed to get away. Now to deal with this guy. You want to see what I can do? Diamond Head grinned. You got it. He slammed his hands onto the ground. The Espada was curious as to what he was doing when a crystal shot out of the ground and struck Enoitra right in the gut. The sudden attack caused the Arankar to keel over, and Diamond Head saw that as his chance. He leaped into the air, and by the time Enoitra looked up, Diamond Head was coming straight at him. This is for Apache, Diamond Head roared as he cocked his fist back and socked Enoitra right in the face. Even if he was a guest in Las Noches, there was no way he was going to let a creep like Enoitra get off easy for his actions. The blow knocked Enoitra for a loop. Seriously, he actually spun in the air before hitting the ground. Growling, the Arankar started picking himself back up, only for Diamond Head to clutch his hands together and bring them down on Enoitra's back, making him face plant into the sand. Now that's what I call a sandwich, Diamond Head laughed at his own horrible joke. Enoitra shook his head furiously, trying to remove the sand on his face. Is that the best you can do? He yelled. Not really, Diamond Head taunted back. I'm just getting warmed up. Really? Enoitra grinned. So am I. Diamond Head was about to move, but at that moment, Enoitra swung his leg, tripping Diamond Head and causing the Petrosapian to fall flat on his back. I'll admit you've got some moves, Enoitra chuckled as he stood straight up. But my Hyero is the strongest of the Espada. You're gonna have to do better if you want to really hurt me. Hyero? Now what was that? Enoitra prepared to attack again, and Diamond Head prepared to defend himself. Only for Starak to appear behind Enoitra and grab onto his weapon. Needless to say, Diamond Head and Enoitra were shocked by his sudden appearance. Stark, Enoitra stared at his fellow Espada. What do you think you're doing? Stark asked, a hint of seriousness in his normally casual tone. Enoitra snarled at his fellow Espada. This doesn't concern you, Stark. Lord Aizen put me in charge of watching over our guest, Enoitra, Stark countered. I think it does concern me. Enoitra snarled again and tried pulling his blade out of Stark's grasp. Stark merely tightened his grip, causing Enoitra to grind his teeth angrily as he failed to free his weapon. This is my fight, Stark, Enoitra growled. Stark just looked at Enoitra, looking sort of bored. Leave, Enoitra. What? Enoitra exclaimed. Stark sighed as he scratched his head with his free arm. I really don't want to use force, Enoitra, but if it's the only way to make you go away, I might have no choice. Both Diamond Head and Enoitra were stunned by this declaration, but Enoitra quickly recovered from his shock and smirked. Well now, he chuckled. This human must be pretty special if you're actually willing to fight for his sake. Lord Aizen wouldn't like it if I let anything happen to him on my watch, Stark said with a shrug as his free hand went to his katana. Besides, Lilinet seems pretty fond of him. If I let him get killed, she'd never leave me alone about it. Gee, Diamond Head said dryly. How thoughtful. But Enoitra didn't back off at the idea of the Primera Espada fighting him. In fact, he looked excited. Really excited. All right, Stark, he said gleefully. If that's the way it's gonna be, bring it on. That will be enough, Enoitra. Enoitra, Stark, and Diamond Head all quickly turned to see Aizen standing before them, Tozen and Jin standing on either side of him. Lord Aizen, Enoitra muttered. Seeing that this fight was over, Diamond Head was engulfed in a flash of green light before being turned back into regular Ben. Everyone present gave him the briefest of looks before facing each other again. Stark let go of Enoitra's weapon, and the latter quickly put it at his side. I was informed of some very interesting news, Aizen said. Aside from the fact that Emilu Apache was badly wounded by Enoitra, I also heard that he was fighting with our guest. I decided to look into the matter, and now I find two Espada about to attack each other. What exactly brought all this on? Enoitra averted looking at Aizen directly, probably realizing he might be in serious trouble. That beach attacked me just because I said some stuff about Harable, so I had to defend myself. Ben glared at Enoitra's ridiculous excuse as he got up. Judging from Stark's deadpan look and Jin's smile widening, nobody else really bought it. Defend yourself, Aizen said. That's very interesting, Enoitra. HAREM must be training them really well if you had to defend yourself against 3 Fraxian. OMNITRIX winced as he realized what he had set himself up for. Ben couldn't help but feel a little smug at seeing his newfound adversary dig himself into a hole. He started kicking Apache while she was down. So I stepped in, he interjected. Now OMNITRIX was the one glaring at him. I fought him so that the others could get away. How considerate of you, Ben, Aizen commented. That was very brave and very risky, choosing to fight someone like OMNITRIX, especially for the sake of those 3. I was under the impression that HAREM's Fraxian weren't particularly fond of you. I don't care, Ben said firmly. Even if they hate my guts, I wasn't just going to sit there and do nothing. Aizen smiled softly at the human. You truly are a noble person, Ben, and considering that you don't look worse for wear, it seems you were able to hold your own against OMNITRIX. The fact that he was still in his sealed state does not take away the impressiveness of this feat. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 3. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Bigby the Big Bad Wolf FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.